Good evening, everyone. My name is Gaëlle Morel, and I'm the exhibitions curator at the Image Center. On behalf of the IMC, I would like to thank you all for joining us tonight for Jin-me Yoon's and Euijung McGillis conversation. I would like to note that I'm speaking tonight from the heart of Toronto, and this place is dated in and among the traditional territories of many Indigenous peoples, past and present, among them the Anishinaabe, the Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee. We embrace our shared ongoing responsibility for this land. It is once again a great honor for us at the Image Center to present the annual exhibition of the Scotiabank Photography Award in collaboration with the Scotiabank Contact Photography Festival. It was a great pleasure to work with the 2022 winner of the award, Vancouver-based artist Jin-me Yoon. Before I introduce Jin-me's show, I'd like to thank some key people. Darcy Killeen, Tara Smith, and the whole team at the Scotiabank Contact Photography Festival. Ryan Borella, Sarah Lowe, and Charlotte Priddle from Scotiabank. The designer of the wonderful Steidl book about Jin-me's work, Bar Gilmore, and my co-judges of the 2022 Scotiabank Photography Award, Edward Budzinski, Sophie Hackett, and Kenneth Montague. I'd like to mention a few program notes before we begin. We are recording tonight's event and we'll be uploading it onto our YouTube channel in the near future for those who weren't able to attend tonight or for those who would like to watch again. Closed captioning through Zoom webinar has been made available for tonight's audience. After the lecture, we will commence a Q&A. If you have questions throughout the lecture, please use the Q&A function located at the bottom of your screen to submit them. Other listeners can use the vote up feature to vote for popular questions in case we do not have time to address them all. And lastly, in the case of a technical difficulty, please remain patient while we correct the issue. Jin-me's exhibition is on view in both our main gallery and our university gallery through August 5. This exhibition, composed of a seminal series along with new works, celebrate Jin-me's lands-based art. Korean-born and based in Vancouver, Yoon reflects critically upon the construction of national and diasporic identities in relation to her personal experience and broader geopolitical context. The artist repurposes visual stereotype and dominant narratives to explore gender, culture, and citizenship in an accelerated, globalized era. Yoon's work also reframes viewers' understanding of some of the most pressing issues today, including the impacts of colonialism, militarization, displacement, and environmental devastation. Over the last 3 decades, Jin-me's work has been presented in over 200 exhibitions across North America, Asia, and Australia, as well as select institutions worldwide. Most recently, one of her films, screened at the Venice Biennale, she was presented in a solo exhibition at the Vancouver Art Gallery and a touring survey organized by the Musée d'Art de Joliette. Euijung McGillis is a curator, educator, and art historian. Her curatorial works and research interests include Asian Canadian studio photography, contemporary Asian photography within a broader context of the Asian diaspora, and transcultural art practices of contemporary Asian art. McGillis frequently facilitates self-reflective tours of Jin-me's work through slow looking. She is currently assistant curator of Photographs Collection of the National Gallery of Canada in Ottawa. Jin-me, EJ, you have the microphone. Thank you.
Thank you, Gaëlle.
And there we are.
Hi, EJ.
Hi, Jin-me. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Jin-me. I'm so excited to be part of this conversation. So grateful to be invited to this talk. I want to thank, first of all, Gaëlle, Valerie, Kristen, and Molly, Dakini, Simone, Brian, Kessa, Kike, Eric, Jen, Paul, and those who I didn't get to learn their names during my visit to this gallery. Thank you so much for putting out this extraordinary exhibition for all of us. This evening, you are invited to a virtual tour of Jin-me Yoon's exhibition, This tour will be led by the artist herself, and I'm joining here as her assistant navigator, aka sidekick. My main role here is to keep her on track so we can finish the talk in time, on time. And my other role is to accompany Jin-me and all of you this evening to provide sort of an entry point to some of the works in this exhibition in order to assist you to identify the ways in which these works are in dialogue. I just described the works in this exhibition are in dialogue. In fact, they're speaking to each other, continuously unfolding multiple sets of relations to which we're invited. These conversations are loosely structured in 4 sections. So 3 main rooms we're going to go through together with Jin-me, and then the one last part is in University Gallery. So we're going to look around all 4 rooms. And I would like to point out real quickly that these photographic works without sonic elements, you can listen to them carefully. I said listen to them carefully. They're incredibly loud. They start talking to you as you walk into the space. Borrowing the words from my mentor, Andrea Cunard, Jin-me Yoon's photography offers a way to think about the medium as active, adaptable, and mobile one, well suited to engaging with the constantly changing reality. In that sense, I think Jin-me's works in this exhibition strongly urge us to join the conversation, which is not static, not completed, yet not shaped in one way. So through a careful act of listening to each image, you could witness the subjects or communities depicted in the work being redressed, reinterpreted, reanimated, and reactivated while generating multiple sets of relations. It all depends on your own positionality, of course. In other words, we're all implicated somehow in this conversation. So Jin-me, are we ready?
As ready as I'm ever going to be. Thank you so much,
Okay.
EJ. So lovely. Yes, I'll wait till my thanks, and I'm really thankful that Gael mentioned everybody, because obviously everyone that Gael mentioned has something to do with the fact that I was able to present my work and have a beautiful Scotiabank Photo Award book and published by Steidl. So it's a great honor for me to be here. And I'm coming to you from the unceded ancestral territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh people. And I just want to say, I try not to make the letters so big in my name here, but I had no choice. This is the template, but there it is in beautiful orange. Let's go inside, EJ, and I'll start the tour.
Let's get started.
Yes, and as EJ said, basically, there's 3 rooms. There's thresholds. I kind of consider them thresholds into other spaces that are porous, but nonetheless have distinct kind of conversations within the rooms. That's the way that we organized the show with the curator Gael and with Senior Exhibition Officer Valerie Mathieu, who is also instrumental. So you've got an overview. You come in and you can see the blue. The blue allows the architectural structure of the gallery to be highlighted with the 2 threshold open passageways. And you encounter the first works, which I made in 2010 and only reprinted last year. I had a chance to go through my archives, which I hadn't done in a long time. I've just been simply too busy with contingencies of life and also just making the new work, etc. And there's a lot more there, but I did select some works that seemed to me pertinent for my explorations of time, which is a central preoccupation. So you see, this is shot in Nagoya. There are always, usually I should say, not always, photographic works that are in parallel stream with video works. There's a multi-channel video work that goes along with this piece exploring Nagoya and its industrial history. And so here, this Oasis 2 focuses on a literal architectural structure called Oasis, which kind of envisions an imaginary future in relation to a rather stereotyped or imagined past with the dinosaur topiaries and the robot clock. And you see me on the ground, and the video is actually for a number of years. I moved on a moving platform horizontally, crawling through various cities that have contributed to my cultural or intellectual, artistic, or just generally had something to do with my history. So here I am in Beppu, I should say in Beppu here, which is then a kind of image of a past, not too recent past. And it's a beautiful place where there's a lot of geothermic activities, where there's a very beautiful bathing culture that honors the body, onsens, the mineralized hot springs that are everywhere prevalent in this town, Beppu, and the atomic victims of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And people don't know this fact, but many who were Zainichi, who were Korean living in Japan, they were brought because they found that the radiation symptoms were alleviated for some by taking the waters, by soaking in the mineralized water. I found this really, really beautiful. So the past, the imagined future, which is here already, I put those in kind of juxtaposition in this room to have a conversation about the present moment, which then leads us into the series that I made in 2022 called Long Time So Long.
Yeah, so I just find it quite interesting and fascinating that you kind of like juxtaposing, like a different temporalities right here, and then especially with the ones that you made last year, that which is Long Time So Long. These four beautiful prints right here. So I was wondering, like in this room, each work addresses different time in local history, individual experiences, and site-specific issues entangled in colonialism, militarism, industrialization. Of course, we're talking about environmental crisis as well. And then I'm paying attention to this this particular work, Chronochrome. I'm just gonna zoom into that particular work. As you can see, right here, the vanishing point is right here in the middle of the mask. And then this figure, I know it's you, but that you are wearing that mask on the back of your head. And then you are actually looking, I guess, like you're looking forward. And then the mask is actually looking back, just like, Benjamin's Angel of History, like you are kind of looking both like a past, you are in present, but then you're looking forward, and then you are also looking back as well. So would you tell us more about this this juxtaposition of different temporalities, and then especially, and also this shadow to me is quite interesting as well. And then kind of like condensed and kind of like shrunken and then into a kind of like almost like a hole to me. Would you like to talk more about that image in relation to your layering these different temporalities?
Yeah, I think this is I think about photography and it's kind of a gestalt all at once. And I think that's the way I think about time in terms of the present, the future, and the past. And that's why photography is fabulous for me to explore that in an image. And I as far as the shadow is concerned, that brings me back to perhaps maybe if you could go back to the Beppu image, Kanawa district. I kind of worked with this image to make sure, and the figure in black is often in my work. And now that's a big transition because there's a figure and me performing in what is ostensibly an off-white or white, costume. And so this is kind of like a whole, the figure lying on the ground. And it, of course, I'm thinking about the atomic bomb more immediately in that image. But also I always think about the shadow which accompanies us. And that also is another kind of portal for me. and I can talk about that at length and different registers,
Yeah,
but I'll
yeah.
keep it short because
Let's keep going. Let's keep moving.
yeah.
So we'll see
Yeah.
more of some of your
Yes.
long time
Yeah.
so long works here. That mask.
Yeah.
So we can talk about this mask, that emojis, and then in the next room actually.
Okay. Yeah. Just
Yeah. So. Would you
yeah,
like
this
to-
one. Yeah, I
Yeah.
wouldn't mind stopping just here for a
Yeah,
minute,
right
EJ,
here,
if you
yes.
don't mind, just because we will talk about the way that I'm very interested in tradition, but not
Mhm.
in like a recuperative sense of authenticity or a kind of nostalgia that just stays still, that I think it's always transforming. But I think
Yeah.
when you talk about rapid industrialization and a kind of certain vision of modernity
Mhm.
that was imposed and was accepted, and we're still dealing with that, through mostly through a certain kind of relationship to Japanese colonialism, if you like, and kind of how it played out in terms of the turbulence of 20th century Korea.
Mhm.
I think about using the Taichung masks because there's so much richness that I had discovered these when I was learning about folk dances as a teenager, learning about my heritage as someone who came as a child, but also during university, I had access in my first degree at University of British Columbia to the Museum of Anthropology. And there were a lot of Taichung masks there and other things that either soldiers or missionaries or people who had spent time in Korea. Not a lot of diasporic contribution at that point, I don't think. So I looked at those and I thought they were fabulously formally and just inventively beautiful. And then I learned more about, through various means, and we didn't do the Taichung, but learned about the resistance that is contained within these masks, that the so-called commoners or the peasants, if you like, in a feudal class system could don these masks and then have various characters and enact in a very kind of, I don't know,
you become
vigorous.
free in a way.
Yeah, because
also,
you're masked. Yeah.
And also kind of like totally kind of disregard like any kind of hierarchy or any
That's
meta
right.
narrative that kind of imposing on you. Kind of now
That's
you're a
right.
different person. You can
Yeah.
critique and you can kind of comment on things
Exactly.
you would never. Up to you. Would you like to go to the next room so we can talk more about the use of that?
And here, of course, I'm mashing it up with emojis because I don't, and some of them look more like emojis and others look more like Taichung, but I've tried to mash them because here we are.
Here we are. Yeah.
I mean, we kind of, EJ and I and Gail and, Valerie, we've been talking about this as kind of like the pandemic room, just casually between us, like, anecdotally. It's not about the pandemic, but I did make this work, like it was conceived during the pandemic and made during the pandemic. And it takes me quite a long time to make work, even though the production schedule is different, but the incubation period, if you like, and the research period. But I wanted to say that for me, that these masks, they, refer partly to emojis because we relied so much on technologies to communicate with each other. And then also, the social and psychic effects of just not being able to be together, to touch each other, hug each other, and enjoy meals and whatever we do together in all its varied ways.
Take for granted, like that's just quotidian things that we just kind of do, and then we miss those things. But I would like to point out that the use of humor here, Jin-me, because like the Taichung, again, that in Korean tradition, that Korean dance, that you wear that mask and then you turn it into, you can actually take a different persona, then you can kind of like laugh at things, that the problems and issues, right? But that you're using this humor in a very different way that I can feel there's some sort of a power, like, creating some power towards repair, healing those things at the same time that, again, that like an open invitation to kind of work through problems together kind of situation. So would you like to comment more about your use of humor in this particular work and in general in your art practice?
Yeah, I was going to say the emojis during that time when we relied on technologies did allow to infuse a little bit of nuance. And so, or something else, so for me, the humor, I think, is one way to survive. So I think, yes, the commoners were, so-called commoners, were able to act out the most suppressed aspects of being in that social position and exploited and oppressed. And yet at the same time, it's a containment as well. So I never see one thing as one thing. And so what it allows me to do is humor also opens up spaces, right?
Yeah.
It opens up spaces literally, psychically, but also socially, culturally, politically, to be able to enter something else where you open it up. And I think every culture, and this might be a little bit universalizing, but I think every culture has that kind of figure or figures that do that, and are kind of accepted, even though they're kind of ambivalent figures, like clowns, for example, are just the ways in which that you can use humor to subvert, to heal, to release. I think it just has so many dimensions, and I think it's kind of critical, in fact, to a lot of my work, even though it doesn't seem like it's funny. There is always, sometimes it's a little bit dark humor or deadpan humor, but I've always relied on it just for my own pleasure and coping. But
then
this
something
is
something more interesting happening here again. So you kind of like put these the figures with the mask, and then there is like
that's right
here. So I just wanted to show you the audience these flattened images of these three masks. This is the back of the lion mask, right here. And then you'll see this like, acupuncture needles. So I would like to hear about, the meaning of these flattened images of the masks, and also acupuncture needles. And then I heard, you once told me that these masks are kind of like, fit to a face, like, anybody who has a face can wear this. And then we were talking about like, showing the commonality, and then appreciating the value of differences, but at the same time, you want to totally avoid like a false notion of universality, that kind of, that. So if you can touch on that, that aspect of.
Thanks, EJ. I think for me, just to say formally, these are like big, they're blown up. I always play with scale. And in this exhibition, I did make a lot of big prints, which I hadn't for a long time. And it was kind of a pleasure to do that. And the space called out for it. And, I had the capacity to do it. So I thought, why not? And these then become, I didn't want them to be anthropological or ethnographic in any way. So I need to figure, I need them to be like, not the object. Of course, they refer to the object, like you say, there's that correspondence to the masks fronts, but they're flattened. I deliberately flattened them in the way that I made the picture. The photograph actually is like invites, I think, with the title, a kind of relationship. I made them and I call them prosthetic because I don't think they're natural. I think we have to make it up, and they're prosthetic in the sense they're put on. So this is like the mask that you could put on, but it's a mask that you go through in terms of an image, because they're not literally 3D. They're the image, and they're flattened image, which is like the doorway, you step in the threshold. And the acupuncture needles, of course, they change in terms of scale because they're not that big. So they're both at once, like these things that stab and the things that heal, because they could become quite large when you blow them up that big. And for me, acupuncture is one of the ways that I feel I respond to healing, and every needle that I use, not that it's so important to anyone else, but it's important to me, just for my own quirky reasons of being the artist, is that they were in my body, and they are now transferred this energy into these images, which then have the armature of the face, that anyone's face can go in. It won't fit perfectly, but they're kind of generic padded, soft armature, shaping a face. So, and I'm always playing with front and back, partly because when we'll go into that relationship from front and back in that last room. But I want to just comment also on Inside Broken Worlds, which is this is made out of Hunji paper. Those are made out of Hunji paper, which is a Korean name for the mulberry paper. But this one is fiberglass, and it's turned upside down. So the flouted things or fluted things, the orifices, they become the bullet holes or the holes in the head, or holes where consciousness can come in, like multiple things. And I'm thinking, what does it mean to turn it upside down with the holes? And I thought it was beautiful that there is no armature for the face, but it kind of, to me, looks like the globe, or, it's something that is then turned into something else that's not just about the human face, even though the eyes are still there. So anyway, and they're made out of fiberglass. So these are the things that I was thinking about when I made them.
So that particular mask, we're looking at it right here. That reminds me of that, German fable of Piper.
Yeah.
That, the one, so you see kind of little, like right here to me, kind of like you can make sound with that particular part. And then, so I remember that like a little story that the town refused to pay the piper. So who had to pay for the price? Their children. He took the children, right?
Yeah.
So, in my understanding, the Long Time So Long series was conceived and then also materialized, made it during the pandemic. And then you once stated that, I find it quite, interesting and then quite, powerful. Your message is that this virus has weakened not just our physical, but our social immune systems. So here I am, here I see this, the hinsek. So hinsek is kind of like, in Korean tradition, that means like it's a funerary color, right?
Yeah, and exactly.
Then, so you use that, like the shape of this hinsek mask, and then figure lying on the ground right next to, you can talk more about this sewage pipeline with 7.5 kilo, that sewage pipeline in Iona Beach, right? So it's relying right there. So I kind of like started connecting dots that like, okay, so all this environmental, crisis issues, that who's going to pay for this? Like our children's generation, right? In a way. And then also, I like you emphasized it, like you should stay in the trouble, in the damaged. We need to embrace all the wrong of the world. So like, would you talk more about that? Like, staying with the problem and then solving the problem together in that sense?
I'm always attracted to sites that are damaged somehow, but also have the potentiality of things turning or changing, and I'm not really a utopic thinker in that way, but I do believe that when people get together and they refuse, in this case, Iona Regional Park, it's a perfect example for me. It's on Musqueam land, and the Musqueam peoples, of course, were rightly, working towards saying, listen, working against the damage that was being imposed to the site, which meets the Fraser River. It's estuarine and the ocean, and this sewage pipe was one of the degradations to their ancestral territories. Was 7.5 kilometers long, like you say. It was in the 50s. The BC government, I think, in perpetuity, got the lease for $1. So you can imagine. And then the sewage facilities, which wasn't very refined in terms of almost raw sewage going out to the sea. And the city of Richmond, which this sewage pipe basically brought sewage from all other municipalities, that citizens of the city of Richmond and, you know, and the Musqueam and other environmental groups made this an environmentally protected area because the wild birds came and migratory birds came to this site, and part due to the sewage as well. But now it has become, you know, the treatment center. Yeah, the treatment center is, you know, handling our shit literally, and totally in a way that's much more environmental, and uses this in a our humanure in a useful way. Like it's at least a small story, but a big story of staying with the trouble or staying with the shit, you know. And so I'm kind of like acting out all sorts of things with this concrete structure, because concrete is also like such a industrial material. And then the rocks, you know, that anyway, I could talk on and on, because this is not just, it's not just a psychic space, which I think we all were in very alone psychic landscapes, interior, and we saw the exterior landscaping, whether it's urban or not, being drastically different. The animals certainly came alive during the pandemic when we were out of the way. All those things that we noticed, I think they're also attached to physical landscapes, because like you said earlier, the site provides a kind of actuality of histories. Now they can be told differently, and I don't know all of it, of course, not at all, but that's a big part of kind of what draws me, is the actual place, and then things happen, you know. And so they're both psychic and physical.
Exactly. So, and then, you know, you emphasize that without re-traumatizing what's happened to us. You just do not want to kind of like, you know, just repeat or kind of like reenact that trauma that we had to go through, right? So you're using humor in that sense as well. So
and can I just say one thing, EJ, in relation to that? It's not, although we called it the pandemic room, it really was made during the pandemic, but it's not about the pandemic, because I'm not a documentary maker. I think I myself more like a poet or something like that, you know, like all the things that other people do in such a beautiful way, whether it's documentary, and there's so many great experimental documentaries too, or journalists, like concerned citizens, activism, those things, scholarship, you know, they sit side by side. I learned from that, right? But my way is not to necessarily load that up, but the site provides that, the land provides that, you know, and history provides that, whether I'm, and it's dependent on where I'm working and my own relationship to that place in history. So anyway,
so this is the cue that we're now moving on to the next room.
Yes, thank you.
So here in this room, in my understanding, I get time, concept of time being understood intergenerationally. Again, like here we see the concept of time being reworked and understood that way. So I mean, I remember we just casually, like you were just happily talking about Hwanga, you know, turning 60 in lunar calendar, like, which means the number 60 means that accomplish one big 60-year cycle. And then as the second cycle begins, the elders prepare to share their lived experience, their wisdom, their knowledge with the young in Korean traditions. Would you share your thoughts on completing a cycle of this work through? You're actually kind of working through this cycle, honoring a group of 67. I'm going to show you all this here. You can see it right here. And also, so you're kind of like honoring your parents' generation. At the same time, I mean, in this room, we have this work, actually, that you created this work, you know, working with, you know, youth of Korean ancestry, right? And creating this particular work, and also Turning Time, Pacific Flyways, and then a group for 2067. Also, like you featured these young not children, but these young people that,
Yeah.
you've worked with. So would you talk more about that, that relation, that set of relations you created, kind of connecting all these together?
Yeah. Well, I'm always blaming Gael for saying, oh, we're open to how you're going to shape this, but I'm going to say we need a group of 67, and the Vancouver Art Gallery generously, provided permission. So I'm happy to show this work from 1996. It's of the people I was in relation with in terms of the Korean community I grew up in. There was my family, and then extended family, and then friends, and then elders, and some people I know better than others. But I never thought that for a minute, because I was in my 30s, and I had a child with diapers on still. So it was like kind of chaotic, and never thought like that, I was inadvertently making an archive of the Korean community at that time in Vancouver. And I won't go over like, why the title, blah, blah, blah. You can read about that. But I think for me, more emotionally, that a lot of the elders have passed, including my father. And I was making kind of like trying to make another opening, if you like, through kind of juxtaposing these well-known paintings of Lauren Harris's Moline Lake, and Emily Carr's Old Coast Village, and which I think is in Haida Gwaii, and Moline Lake is part of the Rockies. So these kind of iconic images of place, and putting the Korean figure both front and back, and asking questions about our assumed understandings, and how understandings of nationalism are kind of, I guess, disseminated. And for me, it was always a question mark, because it wasn't just about kind of pointing to white settler colonialism, which is just the actual history of this country. It's not. I remember people took real offense to that, and I think it's just we're reckoning with that reality now, and it's just a reality, and that we're all reckoning with it. And I always thought about our position here, inheriting that, but also with our own history of colonialism, which is very different, but there's some shared aspects of colonialism. And thought, okay, for me, I want to update the situation with how we think about it in terms of reckoning with living on unceded ancestral lands of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam peoples in terms of Vancouver, what we know as Vancouver. So I made this work in, like, again, industrial sites. This is on Tsleil-Waututh land with youth of Korean ancestry. They're really mixed in all kinds of ways, like different ethnicities coming together, also different genders, different sexualities, different classes, like you name it. It's not uniform. That's like a myth that we're the same. We're not. We never were. But my parents' generation, when they came, they were dispersed through war, and they came from very, very different regions of Korea, and et cetera, et cetera. But they came together out of creating a community through dispersion, in fact, not about sameness. So the youth that I work with, and then there's different components of how I formally work with the moving image, and often I work in installation with sound, and this is the same group in this 18-channel work that was just shown at the VAG that closed in March. So for me, I guess the question of intergenerationality is central. And then I just want to make one comment, trying to always kind of move through opening up where we've landed. But our history as diasporic peoples and our lands, that's a central question, because obviously we're not going back home. We're here, and where are we? My parents, if you just could go to that image, I want to say this new work is from 2021. It's not chromogenic, it's inkjet. It's the fronts and backs together. It's almost portrait size. It's 5 feet long by 26 inches or something like that. And why I made this is because I was so like so many people upset and just completely dismayed by the frontal racism against East Asian peoples during the pandemic, anti-Asian racism that was I experienced, my family experienced, and we our friends experienced, etc. And I thought, wow, it's not very deep under the surface in terms of yellow peril, which those histories we inherit from earlier migration histories of East Asians. And I thought, no, we're all individuals. I don't mean individuals like we're singular, like rugged individuals, like cowboys, like, cowboys and even, I mean, individuated, but we're not the same. We're not a glom. So I wanted to make sure that was understood. And I want to honor also those that have passed, those that are alive. My father's passed, my mother's alive, and also recognize that these things have to be continually readdressed, and the struggles we think we've made some gains on, you see what's happening now with, let's say, trans people and sexualities, anti-queer movements. It's just, you just have to keep working at it and not ever be asleep and complacent. And that doesn't mean you're all fried, because I think that's the way they want us to feel, whoever they are. But you know what I mean, the haters. But being loving means that we also bring joy to the making, and create new communities of repair and care. Yeah.
I'm moving fast along with the slides.
We have to. Keep me moving. Keep me moving.
So
still moving.
Here, now you're adding. I'm just going to add one more layer to this conversation. That with this beautiful work, listening place. So I clearly recall that the photograph inserted, that the VAG exhibition catalog, which is there's a second page, second last page, that that you and Chief Bill walking together, like a few steps apart. You were just kind of, but that photo was taken from behind, so I cannot see your faces, your facial expressions, but the way you walk, I mean, it's kind of like so respectful to each other. And then probably you were just talking about something. And to me, that image is like a sort of like a prequel to this particular work, Listening Place. So I'm wondering that your, that relationship, the set of relations that you created with Chief Bill, would you speak more about that relation as well?
Well, I'm very grateful and thankful to hereditary chief, the Squamish Nation, Chief Bill Williams, and his son, Mark, who have been teaching lessons about dispossession and importantly, reparation on the actual sites around Vancouver and in further out in Squamish territory. And this is under the Burrard Street Bridge, and he was recounting the story of his family when they were literally dispossessed by being thrown on a barge and then some coins tossed and then sent over to North Van, and then 2 days later his family's village was burned on the site. So now he was one of the main negotiators of various things, and this land now belongs to the Squamish again. And I think, you see the structure here. It's a very formal picture of all the arches and what supports. And it's kind of a quiet picture of listening and also just gathering in a very intimate way and not in any kind of political optical way. It's like not about optics, but about listening. And so we're very, very small, and it's a quiet image. which is,
And
you
then
know,
you put your children, the younger generation,
oh
in,
yeah,
in
yeah,
the light, and
Keenan,
then you are here with Chief Bill in the
yeah.
shadow.
Well, that's another way. I mean, it was partly coincidental, and
Yeah.
you know, I will be thanking the people who helped me, but Rachel Topham took this picture, and she's been working with me since 2017. She's a gifted photographer, and I think when I look through all the images and of, you know, I find that there's such incredible nuance. You know, it's not like I'm into mastery or like I'm Hollywood. Like, could you please put, you know, a megawatt, or we're only going to come, we're going to come for X many days. I mean, it's partly serendipity, partly thinking about these sites that allows a kind of image like this to be made. But they're also talking to other images that have been made, you know, and I don't have time to get into those kind of references, those interreferences. So because we have to move on to the next room.
We have,
questions.
Next room, the last room. Let's go. So here we're walking through into this university gallery, and then we have three works together right here. And I just find it here sort of like an embodied experience of war, colonialism, industrialism, modernization. They're all kind of like, you know, together in this room. And then I would, you know, but my last question is that how do you reconcile your own preoccupation with the intergenerational memories of war, militarism, and the colonial history of Korea? Because this actually, you know, I am thinking through that question all the time, but still I don't have an answer for that. But as a settler immigrant and artist yourself, like living on the unceded indigenous land and burdened with your own, you know, colonial history and all these things. How do you reconcile? How do you work through that?
Well, I think just that's why I make the art. I'm not sure if I have any answers. I just think that for me, they're always there, like, you know, the intergenerational, whether it effects of war, let's say, or colonialism, they're just, whether they're explicitly spoken about or not, they've always been present. And it's about presencing for me. And, you know, representation has something to do with that. And, you know, it's one of the reasons that I do use photography, but I also think presencing something, that's more what I'm interested in, making something felt and also bringing those things into a kind of, I guess, a kind of poetics or interrelation, like how things are shaped with images. Because really, I think Gael and I discussed, and also you know, Sharon Kanoff, who helps me so much for the publication, but also this exhibition, etc. She's been producing a lot of my work since about 2017, and she's was in the conversation too, and it's really like, okay, let's make this a photo show. It's a lens-based prize, but it's still, I want to accentuate the photographic because I usually don't do that. So for me, presencing something to have it felt without it being direct necessarily, or the conceptual aspects of the work, not cool conceptualism, even though I use that strategy, sometimes it's really hot for me, like emotionally hot, politically hot, psychically hot, physically hot. So war, you know, I mean, we have the invasion of Ukraine on our minds, of course, but there's wars also happening in many other places. And so I like to just say that's the only video, because it's almost imagistic, where these soldiers keep proliferating, and then, you know, and I just like to read, because I also decide to put the fact that war has been with us for a long time, not that that's acceptable, but I just want to read from Lao Tzu, 400 BC, the last 4 lines, if you just don't mind. I know we don't have much time. This means that war is conducted like a funeral. When many people are being killed, they should be mourned in heartfelt sorrow. That is why a victory must be observed like a funeral. And, you know, that is the grief that I feel for when I read about the Korean War. And I continue to whether it's historical or whether it's through artistic representation or novels, whatever, it brings me that kind of sorrow. And then when I think about all the other wars and the bodies and the mourning, and so there is no victory. There is no victory in war. And I hope that I don't know. I wish that you know, I really yeah, I feel a lot of grief, and we end with this image, which is, you know, partly about the Korean burial mound, but also shot in a very heavily militarized area of the New Channel peoples, the Talaguat and Yukulit in particular, where I made Longview, which and I made this site also part of testing ground. So it is soaked with colonialism, militarism, and, you know, thinking about tourism, because it's called, you know, when people go there as tourists and go surfing, all that's invisible, right? All that history, all that suffering, all that grief is invisible, and it's connected. All that is connected geopolitically and through our histories.
Well, so we did it, Jin-me. This is it.
High five. No, you were amazing, EJ. Thank you for thinking so thoughtfully about my work. It's been such a pleasure. And I would just like to just say a quick couple things. I know we're almost at the end, but I just want to say that I mentioned the people that helped me so much. And certainly, EJ, you helped me and you translate my work and bring Korean culture to the fore, which is an important part of who I am as a diasporic subject. But also, I want to say that, you know, Rachel Topham, the photographer, shot a lot of the works, but not all the works. I'm very privileged to work with very skilled and talented people throughout my career, and I list them elsewhere, but also in the acknowledgements of the Steidl and the Scotiabank Photo Award book, I mentioned some people that have been involved. And also, like I said, Ian Kenji Barber is the cinematographer that I work with, editor, and we really work well together. And he's very, very talented and amazing. And Vera Gamboa, who was also so important to the publication, and she works on my archives. And also just Chief Bill and Mark have been so grounding in terms of friendship and hearing directly about what it means to be on unceded lands, Indigenous lands, and my friends and family that are always providing support, and my beautiful colleagues everywhere. So I feel very lucky. I'm very thankful. And it's been such a joy to receive this award and work with everybody that have been, you know, a part of putting this show together and the book together. So thank you. I can't mention everybody. I'm sorry I can't, but I really mean it in a heartfelt way.
Thank you. Thank you, Jin-me.
Thank you, Jin-me. We have a couple of very short questions and very specific. So would you mind going back to prosthetics? The mask,
portals, yeah.
The free mask. Someone is asking why they're hung close together, and actually also have a kind of a secondary question connected to this idea of the space, because you and I, Jin-me, talked a lot about the space and how you look at the space, and you know, the blue wall was important as an introduction, and then so I feel like by answering this question, maybe you could just elaborate a little bit about your relationship to space.
Yeah. Well, I think they're hung closely together to have different views of different feelings I have about things. You know, like inside Broken Worlds, the back of the Hinsek Piper mask which doesn't have the armature, the face in it, but it still has a face, so to speak. And then the lion mask, the Saja mask, which is the lion comes down to cleanse negative energy in the Taichung dance that I was speaking about, the Korean dance. And then the surprise mask, the surprise of so many things in the world that we find ourselves confronted with, including the pandemic, but also, let's say, the orange face of Trump. So they're not about anything specific, but they need to be in relation to each other. And sometimes I won't hang them close together. It's partly just the way I have conversations through installation, that spatially you can articulate certain things. And that's why it's so important to feel the space, to know the space, to have a way of understanding how a body moves through a space. And also happy to say that there were portable chairs that we could carry in, because I really like to honor all sorts of bodies, and mine included, that I need to sit now that I'm older to look at things. So because I get more fatigued, you know. So the blue wall is to highlight the architecture and to highlight this idea of thresholds and portals, and also the interconnection between all the conversations, but also being able to contain the conversations through the particular arrangements of the work in each space, and that you can only walk in from the front door. There's no back door. So the group of 67 kind of grounds the corners, literally the work, you know, and so I hope that answers someone's question about the way that these are hung and how I generally think about space.
Yeah, thank you. And then there's another quick question about the series Long Time So Long. So if you want to about the wardrobe and the importance of it, was it made by you? You know, do they have any specific meaning or?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. Well, usually I've been wearing, I've been a figure in black for a few decades. So I thought, okay, you know, during the pandemic, we thought a lot about death, and the funerary color is white in Korean culture. And no, I didn't make the costume. I designed the costume with Elika. And she, sorry, right at the moment, her last name slips my mind. Sorry, Elika, if you're out there, but she's noted in the credits, which as you exit or enter, you can see everyone listed there. I don't, and my mother's an amazing seamstress. I'm not, but she's, you know, 88 years old, and I think I've exploited her enough in my life. So I asked Lika to sew it, and it's made out of space age materials, like highly reflective kind of materials, as well as this it's traditionally funerary wear is made out of hemp, but I got this other bleached cotton instead. And yes, I designed it based on funerary wear, but loosely interpreted. I don't really like doing it's not about historical accuracy. I'm not really that interested in accuracy when it comes to tradition. I'm more interested on the energetic level, what it can still convey almost secondhand. That's more authentic to me in the way that I am a diasporic subject, and more authentic to me in relation to Korean history and modernity and what happened in terms of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, if you like, in terms of tradition.
So just one more question, and then I think we'll conclude. There's a question about how you integrate the personal and the political together, and how does it work for you, and what does it mean for you to do that? Like having your parents, your children.
Friends, family, community members. To me, that's just the way it is. I mean, I'm always in community. I think of myself relationally. I don't really, I mean, when we say politics or the personal, I mean, of course, you know, there was the feminist adage, the personal is the political, but for me, it's not quite like that. It's everything is there's no binaries for me anymore. I don't think something's personal and something's political. Something's political is personal, not personal. You know, like it's the way like rivers and oceans are one in the estuary. It's like that, you know. So I think I just think about my lived experiences in a larger context, but not necessarily about me per se, even though it's my subjectivity, I guess. I'm thinking about or imagining this stuff, but I think really it's just life, what life is to me. And I don't really make a distinction between something that's political and personal. I mean, yes and no, you know, I don't want to take that argument too far without specificity, but that's just the way it is for me. It's just everything's one thing. And I'm analytical and I can deconstruct, but I'm also interested in putting back things together. And so that we don't silo things or like keep things separate and at a distance. There's got to be the right intimacy and also separation and then putting it back together, you know, somehow. And I think that's the magic and joy of making art.
Well, that's a beautiful conclusion. Thank you, Jin-me. Thank you so much, EJ, Jin-me. It was a wonderful conversation and it was really very brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We have one more public program with Vicky Kwan, and I think she's in attendance, who will lead a tour in Korean on July 19th. So if you can join us, and otherwise have a wonderful night, everyone. And again, thank you all.
Thank you. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.